here into a sea of love. You ready for this? Everyone put your hands together. It's Linda Hamilton! Now, we actually met a couple of months back at Expo out there, that wonderful convention. And my first question is one that I did ask her at that same panel. You actually, for the first time, met of course, is your television counterpart, Sara Connor. So, could you tell us what that was like?
Well, I love her in the 300. It's grown in my mind to 900 because she was so good. So I was a fan of hers before she was cast as Sara Connor. I never saw Sara Connor's because I don't watch television. I'm just completely out of the loop. So I never had an opinion about that. I know how terribly hard it is to replace some icon, to try to replace and, not necessarily replicate, but to, just try to do what someone else has done rather well before. So my heart went out to her the minute that I found out that she was cast, just because, it's usually a massive fail when you're trying to replace somebody that's an icon, right? I mean, I did that. I remember on stage doing, I did a play called Laura, and all the reviewers would say was, she's no Gene Tierney. I'm no Gene Tierney. So, all that said, I was a fan of hers. I never saw her as Sara Connor, but I adore her as a person. She's really cool. Very cool.
We were there for the big, very big tournament reunion, a number of you on the panel. Obviously some extreme fans of the franchises right here in the front row. Let me ask you, for this audience, what is it about the franchise that you think has caused such a fandom about it, a passionate fan base?
Well, I think it was, the actual story of someone traveling through time. And a great romance. And it was a very original tale for its time. I'm not sure that it hasn't been played out a little too much at this point. I'm not sure it's going to go forever. But the time travel and all of the conundrums that created, along with the romance, and watching the character actually change, grow from someone that is completely unprepared and watch her start to really face her future and get stronger. There were so many elements there. And then you have the special effects, so I think it was just sort of tightly done. To give that to Jim Cameron, it was just a really, well-told, tight story with a lot of good elements. Would you agree? You guys made it the hit. Actually, it was a really slow burn, the first one.
Yeah,
it was
the second one certainly.
right. Everybody was like really looking for that. But the first one, I was supposed to go to New York to do press when it opened. They canceled about 3 days before and said no one wants to talk to him. The only one, Arnold. So that's the way it went in those days. But it's fully 7 years later, it was a hit.
Well, let's leave Terminator for a moment. Of course, I'm sure there's people out there who know you can be beast as well. Who I had the pleasure of meeting for the first time just a couple months back about Pacific Rim. So I got to put you on the hot seat. Have you seen Pacific Rim?
Yeah.
Have you talked to him? Because he's here at the convention. You bumped into him in the green room right now? What was that like a month ago?
Okay, I have to confess, I live on a farm. I live on a farm now in Virginia, and I am so out of the loop. I mean, I don't know what's going on at all.
If you don't have plans tonight, go see Pacific
Okay.
Rim. It's really good as well. But on that front, because at these conventions, you do get to meet a lot of interesting people in the green rooms, people you've worked with, and people you'd like to work with. Do you have any fun stories of being in the green room at a convention?
It is never fun.
Okay.
Sandwiches in the green room are terrible. No, you know what? I think we all sit there, and I just actually I have two breath right now. I just came from the green room, so I'm glad that it's only you and me up here.
That's a smell.
Good. And I actually sat myself in the back to the room. There weren't many people there, but quiet as I mean, just like all of you, I want to sit there and watch everybody and see who has attitude and see who has an entourage and see who's a vegetarian or, you know, whatever comes about. You know, it's very curious to see so many different famous people, famous for different things, living completely different lives. So, you know, it's very interesting.
Well, these conventions are obviously about passion. You know, fans are passionate about various TV shows and things, what have you. Is there something that you are a passionate fan of? Do you geek out over anything? What would that be?
Geeked out when I saw the Bruce Springsteen.
Oh yeah,
The
boss.
boss. And man, I was so in love with it. I actually was on a flight with him in first class with just him and me and James Cameron. That's it. We were the only people in front of the plane. And I, of course, had to choose that day to have like a nervous breakdown. Jim hurt my feelings in the car on the way over. So I cried on the plane the entire time. And every time I turned and looked at Jim, Bruce Springsteen was right over his shoulder. And I was having such a hard time. I could not pull myself together. I mean, I wasn't hysterical, but I was just like, I was having mommy burnout and whatever. And every time I looked at Jim, I burst into tears, and there's Bruce Springsteen. And Jim kept saying, oh, Sam, I do love him. So about 10 years later, I saw him at Hollywood opening, or maybe, I don't remember what it was, but it was this huge opening, and there's Bruce and Patty, his wife, and at this point she had released an album. I was madly in love with her as well, and we did actually spend the evening, like, Jim and Cameron kept saying, do you want to go? I was like, no, I'm not leaving until this thing is over. I'm not leaving until Bruce Springsteen leaves. But when I met Bruce, I said, you know, we almost met another time. He goes, yeah, but you were having a really hard day. So I love that, you know, but I truly could not bring myself to speak. And, you know, that happens. That happens.
So you can certainly understand. I guess some fans
Yeah.
might feel a little bit unable to speak. I'm going to put you on the hot seat again and ask you a question. They tell you when you do an interview, never ask a question you don't know the answer to. I'm doing it. I hope it goes okay. Very nice. So I know that you're giving me. Did you audition for the role of Jalen on Stargate Voyager, or is that just something
That
that's
was a
written
rumor.
on the internet?
Absolutely.
Never happened.
No, that's just sort of an urban myth.
All
Or
right, so
Hollywood myth.
if anyone's on IMDb, go ahead and remove that.
And if you have the power to remove from IMDb, I've only been married twice, not 3 times. I'm not an idiot. Twice is plenty. My kids, actually, before I even knew what IMDb was, they were on IMDb as youngsters. And they come out to the kitchen and they go, you were married to somebody who were dads. No, I wasn't. Yes, you were. And I swear to you, they never believed. I mean, they would rather believe IMDb than me. I've never been able to correct that, but really, I've only been married twice.
Well, let's follow that train of thought with Star Trek. Of course, you've done some genre stuff with Beauty and the Beast, Terminator franchise. Chuck is sort of a genre show with its Saturday Night Live.
We love Chuck. We love Chuck.
If offered the opportunity to be, captain of a starship or a very central role on a fantasy series or another fantasy film, do you have a sort of special place in your heart for genre, or are you just looking for any role that gives you something to latch on to?
Any role that gives me something to latch on to.
Yeah.
And you don't want to do something that's a really tired franchise, although, Star Trek, I don't think it's tired yet.
Especially with new films.
That's right, I enjoy them. But it would have to be a question of, not the material, because we all know what the material is going to be when you're the captain of Starfleet, but just, you know, if the group were strong enough and there was really a place for me, I would love to do it.
Well, let's go to the floor if anyone has any questions up there. There's one right there in the yellow shirt.
That is a hard thing to do when you play a character and to know, you know, in your heart of hearts, because there was a 7-year lapse, there was a lag between the two films. So, you know, you have all that time for it to sort of percolate through. So when the second one came up, I knew that there had to be a major transformation, that this woman was going to be insane, just from what she knew about the future to come. So I was collaborative with Jim on that one. He said, we're going to do another one. I said, make her crazy, because she's got to be crazy. And then he wrote me the script, and I was like, oh my God, she's so crazy. You know, it's kind of uncomfortable at first, because, you know, you played her a certain way, even though it was 7 years before. Somehow when you play characters, they really live on within you, and then to sort of have to find that. I mean, certainly I'm strong. If I had to connect, if I had to choose one, I would probably connect better with the second Sara Connor. Although there were terribly uncomfortable scenes in that, where I'm just such a bad mom. You know, just to try to get him strong enough for his future, but you know, she's not a very good mom. And it's hard to play somebody that has those rough edges, not just rough edges, but you know, a character that isn't, that you don't necessarily relate to in all ways. And I guess that's what makes it acting, right? Where you have to bring up certain, you know, all different parts of yourself that you don't necessarily relate to. I think that the problem that so many actors make, and you can understand it, is that you want everybody to like you. That's like the name of the game when you're a celebrity or you're, you know, and so even if you're playing Joseph Mengele, you want people to like you. You know, you end up falling in love with Genghis Khan or whoever it is that you're playing, because that's what we have to do to kind of bring the life out of ourselves. But it's very hard to play somebody that you don't even like. You know, and there was a lot of that in the second one. I look back at the first one and I can't believe how mousy my voice was, how bad my hair was. We actually call that look the Darnell wig, even though it was my own hair. If any of you are old enough to understand that Darnell is like the worst, not human hair, it's like basically a yarn wig. That's what that hairstyle looks like to me. So, you know, it's hard to go back and it's hard to go forward with characters, but, you know, in the end, I think we gathered it all up and sewed it into a good piece.
She certainly is an iconic character, especially an iconic, strong female lead. Do you think that the world's progressing in terms of ending sexism and offering more roles of that nature for women?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that we go through periods like this with anything, you know, if you live long enough, you see that there are patterns. And you know, women in the 40s, women in the 20s were kick ass. I mean, they weren't physical, but boy, they could chew up those men, and you know, the dialogue crackled, and they were just men's equals. And then in the 40s, but you know, it sort of goes like this, and people always want to see different things, so you can't have this progressive growth or something just tabling off. You want your audience to always be surprised by films, and if everybody made the same movie, same politically correct film with strong women matching strong men, we would lose interest. So I really do think there are, you know, wonderful periods of strength and weakness, but I have certainly seen a great resurgence, I guess, of strong women in film.
More from the floor, right there.
Never.
Did
No.
you hear the question?
No.
No, here,
Oh.
I'll try to reiterate, just about working with Robert Patrick, who I actually met at and he was super nice, isn't he? So someone might want to ask that question. Someone might say that.
So the question is, did he, or was there ever a moment where was that to sort of break the sense of theater, break the fourth wall, as they call it, and just sort of make each other laugh? There was not a lot of laughter on T2, and that probably surprises you. But, but you know what? He was so on his game that, I'm always willing to joke around. I'd rather joke around than do anything else in the world. But Robert was working on Praying Mantis, and as his character. And if you go back and you see that movie, you will see a praying mantis. Knowing that, just the way that he moved and the precision. I mean, this man could run, I don't know, was it like 50 miles an hour and not move his head? So he had his work cut out for him like we all did. And Arnold is kind of fun to joke with. Arnold is always going to have his good time. But Robert was very serious and straight. And I think he needed to do that just to keep the character going and that incredible physicality that he was working with every day.
But actors, though, like hanging out with us. That's right. It's nice to meet you.
No, he's a really nice guy. Unless you talk motorcycle gangs. But we won't talk about that.
Okay, moving on. There's a gentleman standing.
Don't ask him about motorcycle gangs.
Ask him about motorcycle. Back there, yeah.
I don't know. I would love to do a cameo. I just think it's the greatest. As long as it's meaningful on some level. I keep wondering why, Beauty and the Beast didn't call me to do anything. I'm kind of hurt. The Beauty and the Beast show, Sara Connor Chronicles, they never called. Nobody calls. But I would do a cameo, just sort of, I'm sure I'll be like 80 years old when they ask me to do a cameo. And we'll see what happens. I'll go, what? What's Terminator?
There's a question right down the road.
Hi.
First off, I just want to say that for me, I love you Terminator DVD. My wife prefers a different genre, the Christmas genre. She loves one for Christmas and watches it every year, and she's fabulous in it. And that sort of leads me to the question is the first Terminator, even in the last show, and some of the other work that he's done, he has this incredible ability to show a combination of strength, but as well as
Thank you, that's very kind. I try to keep my work really simple, and that's not always possible, but I'm not real process-oriented, and I'm never neurotic. I think that my job as an actor is to take one moment to the next moment and link them and make them believable, and bring the truth from one moment to the next, to the next, to the next. I also don't come in with a whole bunch of character ideas. I do my work, but I know that my real job, and this you will not hear from many actors, but my one job is to make the director happy. It's not about making me happy. I mean, I've kept it really simple for myself. Obviously, I'm always going to try to bring the work that I've done onto the screen every day, but when push comes to shove, it really is about just keeping the director happy and making those moments from one to the next believable. You can't make things believable because I don't know who's gonna, you know what I mean? I'm not you, so I can't play you and me at the same time. I don't be believable, but I try to make one moment to the next and make it truthful. And that's the best thing that's the only thing that I can do as an actor. And then lastly, I think that one thing that we miss, and is something very hard to do on screen because there's so much pressure, and there, you're standing like here while people are finishing you off and putting body makeup on and sewing your clothes together and miking you, and you're trying to remember lines, and like you enter a show like Chuck, and they were all so damn relaxed and good at their job. It was like their 4th year, and I come in, it was very high pressure. And Zach is just like singing off camera, while I'm doing like my first scene, which is in chunks of dialogue. I've never watched the show, I have no idea what I'm saying, and Zach is just like, there's so many variables that you never really, you never know what you're going to face, but what I like to see is people thinking on screen. And I think maybe that's something that, we get used to, things get over-rehearsed, and so you're saying lines that you've said 100 times already that day, and you forget that when people talk, they're thinking. They're really thinking before the words come out. And I just try to make sure that I am relaxed and present enough that I always get to think on screen, and I think maybe that's what you see. Because you can't just get up there and say lines and say them like you rehearse them so that they'll sound real. You have to utterly plunge in every time as if you've never said it before and think the lines through. It can't take too much time because nobody really wants to see thinking like that. But that's what we do. We link the moments together and try to think and make it real. Or that's how I do it.
Great answer. Let's go to this side of the room. Sit down.
Hello, welcome, Marco.
Thank you.
We all know about your acting career and all the films. I bet people here can use those word for word, everything you represent on screen. That's fine. What do you do to unwind after your day? How do you get away from it all when you finally need to relax and be yourself again?
Well, for the years that I was raising my children, I found that it was automatic, that I would go home, sit on the ground with my 4-year-old child, and suddenly every other part of the day was gone, except for him. So the children are an amazing way of plugging you into what's real. And indeed, I determined a long time ago that children should be the stars in their own lives, not their parents. So I backed off career a little bit because I did not want I wanted my children to be the stars in our life, not sort of living in the service of their mother, or even, my son was 6 years old before he went, Mom, and some fellow was chasing us from the dry cleaner into the car with the camera. And my son was 6 years old, and he didn't know what was going on at all. I was like, honey, get in the car, get in the car, get in the car. Don't get in the car! And we got in the car, he's like, Mom, are you famous? I had no idea, and I just thought that was probably the best thing. So children are an amazing way to not be famous. And I read. I don't watch much. I'm sorry to say that to all you people. I'm a reader. I'm a compulsive reader. I will never watch television, but I will read the TV Guide cover to cover if it's out. I cannot stop myself, so my life is in books, which feeds my imagination. And I read literature. I like to go and get all of the short list and the long list for all the, Booker Prize and all of them, and just sit down and know that I'm going to be okay because I've got a stack of books this tall. And, I used to say to my children, if you have a love for books, you will always have friends. And that's truthful for me.
Let's see your books for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, it's your top 3, every genre.
Well,
Books are cool,
I know. One of them is A Winter's Tale by Mark Halperin. Anybody here read that? It is such an amazing work that I read 30 years ago. And it's the only book I've ever read twice. I think Mark Halperin is an amazing writer. some of his recent stuff hasn't really moved me. He's kind of moved into satire. It's probably way too smart for his own good. But Winter's Tale, they're making a movie of it, which is funny because I had just reread it. I was like, I want to see if that book is as wonderful as I remember it. And it has some sort of magical realism in it, and it's turn of the century industrial New York, and it has just got such language, you know, I mean, paragraphs that you just go, and he's just describing the gang, the bad people, you know, one bad gang that's running New York. Burley Soames and his gang, but then Burley has to stop and stare at a doorway because of the color of his doorway. And so here's this gangster, and he's not really much of a threat or a terrible, you know, I mean, you know, he's not a mobster, he's just like a young punk wandering the streets of New York, but he has to take 25 minutes to, when color stops him. There's such lyricism. I mean, that's the way he treats the bad guys in the movie, I mean, in the book. And I love that book, Mark Halperin. I have just finished all 5 of Game of Thrones. That was really hard to finish. I truly did not know what I was going to do because I love the writing. And you know, it's like, what is it, 5,000 pages or something that you're reading. And I actually would wake up sort of in a dream state, like in the books, which had never happened to me before because the language was so great and the characters. So I'm a little bereft right now because I finished the Game of Thrones. I just read a lovely book called The Golem and the Genie, which was just released a month or so ago, that is kind of a wonderfully improbable tale that's very beautifully carried off. It's the story of a golem and a genie. Map of the World by Jane Hamilton. I mean, I could go on and on. I vote.
So we'll go back to the floor for more questions. So the bottom of the center, back first.
Thank you. Would you write letters to the head of all the studios, please? No, because at that point we were together, and I think I probably would have said no, because you don't want to be like the girlfriend in the movie, you know, the director's girlfriend. I mean, obviously I'm an actor in my own right, and a strong actor, but I think it's kind of best to keep home and work separate as much as possible, and you know, more to talk about at the end of the day when each brings home something new to the other. Although I would have killed to play that part. Jamie kicked butt with that character, and you know, I love her. And really, my the most unexplored part of